Ransomware in manufacturing is a massive problem. We think about cyber in the context of where is my critical data living, but what about the systems that are critical to my operations? Well, firewalls can be exploited too. That doesn't mean I'm saying, forget about your firewall and go throw it in the trash. In principle, I completely agree. We should try to replace systems that are end of life, but it's just not practical. How can we leverage, modern software to really build towards a state of driving the cost of remediation down? Because that will really change things from a security perspective.
Welcome to the Ransomware Rewind podcast. Today, I'm honored to welcome our guest, Josh Ross. He's the CEO and founder of Ironloop.io. His job is to protect SCADA and manufacturing systems, Department of Defense systems, against ransomware and other threats. We've had over 2,100 ransomware attacks on manufacturing systems in just the first 3 quarters of 2025. And going into 2026, we're seeing more. Josh, welcome to the Ransomware Rewind. And what should we do about all these ransomware attacks on OT?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it, Joe and Mike. Really excited to be here and to chat. For those listening, Joe and I had the chance to meet through a mutual client, and so I was really excited to talk more about the cyber physical side, the technical side of things, alongside the insurance side of things. And yeah, ransomware in manufacturing is a massive problem. Dragos does a great job reporting on the numbers every single year, and we just see this ever expanding, ever continuing growth of attacks on physical infrastructure. It seems like it's been exponential growth ever since Stuxnet back in 2010. What can you do to prevent what feels like black swan events is always a hard question, right? I think it's an evolving landscape. Lots and lots of changes happening as a result of AI, as a result of new technology that's being deployed into these systems. I think there's a lot of effort and focus when it comes to really raising the baseline security of a lot of these systems. Are you doing the right things from a networking perspective, a user access perspective? But where we spend a lot of time thinking about things on the Ironloop side is, are we really elevating the baseline security of our infrastructure, thinking about the ways in which all your different assets are configured and doing that at a low level, really focusing in on practical remediation. I think it's hard when you're an operator of an asset and maybe told by your security consultant or advisor that, hey, you're going to have to spend, $5-10 million to replace an asset in order just to get the latest firmware versions that the vendor might be offering. And so where we focus a lot of our time and energy is on, well, what can we do with the systems that we have? But yeah, it's a challenging problem. Obviously there's the insurance side of it too, right? Where else can you protect your risk in other ways that are not just technical?
Absolutely. Yeah, when we look at the insurance for manufacturing, we have to look at the definition of computer systems and make sure that SCADA machines and all the manufacturing equipment is included in that, because these guys, it's not like the old days where these machines were just, analog machines. They're computers too now, so they can be hacked if there's no air gap, or even if there is an air gap, there's ways around that. Can you talk about that? Like, people think that they're safe just because there's an air gap. What are ways that they're not safe?
Yeah, it's tricky when you assume that you're air gapped, but your devices are networked or posting data back somewhere. I think what we've seen time and time again as we go on site and visit with a variety of customers, not just in manufacturing, but energy, utilities, et cetera, is that folks may say that they're air gapped, but they don't really understand the full extent of their systems. There's been whether you've owned and operated your single facility for its duration, you've had a lot of different operators come through, a lot of different consultants come through, and things just may have changed. Things may be installed that you're not really aware of. Not to mention, from a firewall perspective, if your OT network is connected to firewall, is connected to an IT network in any way, shape, or form, we've seen time and time again that firewall vulnerabilities are getting exploited, and then attackers are able to move into the OT network that way. So we can't just say, well, our assets are networked, but oh, we think we're okay because it seems like it's air gapped because there could be risk elsewhere. So it's always important to focus on, well, how can we raise the baseline security of our systems?
Reminds me of the Target. When Target was compromised, it was someone working on an air conditioner that had IoT, and no one ever thought about securing, IPv6 or any of these ancillary devices. And boy, they got root access to all of Target's merchant accounts. So what you just said really resonates with me. It's just you're not truly air gapped until you see all these other outside sources. Like, where's that data going? Even something as silly as an air conditioner, it can be
Yeah.
compromised.
Yeah, and it's funny, Mike, like what we were talking about before we started with respect to data centers too. You think about HVAC in data centers and how important that is. Those systems have not really been the focus of protection from a cybersecurity standpoint. Often we think about cyber in the context of, well, where's my critical data living? But what about the systems that are critical to my operations? And especially in the data center world, you think about all the security and patching that goes into the servers themselves. But how about the HVAC system that's actually keeping those servers operational? It's a super interesting angle to think about from a cyber standpoint.
It is.
Yeah,
And it's
what is
contrarian to
that?
most data center people say
Sorry, Mike. Sometimes we talk over each other. It's okay.
a lot of times.
Uh,
You got me for editing.
I was gonna say like a anecdote. Like, did you guys see that Mr. Robot show? Where, okay, so like in order to shut down all these data centers, his hack was to take all the data centers and like turn up the heat. Um, he didn't have to actually get into the servers at all. He just had to get into the heating system, turn it up so that all the servers would melt down. So, like you said, there's ways around, brute force attacking.
Yep, exactly.
So
And
back
I'm sorry, go
last
ahead.
year, we had a big scare of like our water getting poisoned from foreign adversaries. I know you probably have a group of customers that are in that industrial um, facility type of business, whether you have water plants or power plants or whatever. But like what happened and how do we stop like our water from getting poisoned?
Yeah, we really do think about the problem in an industry agnostic way. Um, at the end of the day, there's software that are running controllers, different sensors, different embedded systems, and sure, it may be Siemens in one place and Rockwell in another, but from a technological standpoint, from really a software principle standpoint, we see the problem in the same way. And so our view and where we see ourselves as being able to help customers and provide solutions in the market is really in this lower level configuration driven approach to how we think about securing these systems. Yes, I know we just talked about how well firewalls can be exploited too. That doesn't mean I'm saying, forget about your firewall and go throw it in the trash. Like those are great products and you should continue to use them, but we need to practice defense in depth. We need to understand, well, where are other gaps? It can't just be about, oh, well, I've got my firewall and I'm good to go. And so, yeah, when we think about protecting water systems, you should be looking at, well, how can I segment my network more? How can I put things offline more and more? Do I need data from this industrial site to be pushed back to some centralized system that, may be creating a hole inside of my network? There's a lot of things like that I think folks need to think about. Water in particular is challenging. I had a conversation with someone recently from the New York State cyber office, and they're thinking about, well, how can we help with water? How can we provide grants to a lot of these utilities? Because these are often some of the more underfunded organizations um, compared to things like manufacturing. But it's challenging. These solutions are expensive. The exquisite solutions are even more expensive. And so, what are the practical things that we can do to drive up security? Again, is like really where we're focusing a lot of our time and attention.
What about legacy systems? Like all these water systems and power systems are like using machines from the 70s
Yeah,
or maybe
yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I held myself back a little bit yesterday, but SZA, uh, posted something about, oh, we need to update a lot of these edge devices. And there was their practical remediation guide on, well, here's how you can help fix vulnerabilities and close gaps in your systems. And one of the points of guidance was, well, you need to replace the systems that are end of life. Um, I don't think that's really practical. In principle, I completely agree. We should try to replace systems that are end of life, but it's just not practical, right? I'm sure you guys have gone on site and seen Windows 95, XP, Windows 7,
Yeah.
whatever it may be, running a lot of these systems. And these are critical systems that worked yesterday and worked the day before. So who are you to say that, oh, well, you need to spend $5, $10 million to replace this whole machine because of the risk of a cyber attack? Like, we don't think that's practical, which is again why we really focus in on, well, how can we play with the systems that we do have in place? How can we look at elevating the way in which these assets are configured? Are there lower cost approaches you can take in the form of, changing the shape of your network, or providing additional protections, additional layers of defense when you know you have some sort of legacy system that you're just not going to replace. So we don't really like to tell customers like, hey, you should go and buy this new system, because it's just not practical.
Yeah, Windows, they stopped supporting like Windows 10 last year. Now we're on Windows 11, but there are ways that you can buy support for old systems, right? Like you can pay Microsoft uh, to support your old systems, right? Isn't that their way to do that?
Essentially, I'm not too sure. I don't spend too much time in that end of life support space, but I think it's tricky too from the OEM side, where you don't necessarily own the patch cycle, right? The firmware is being controlled by someone else, and yet it's a critical system for your business. And so it's a complicated model in terms of like, well, who and how are you getting those updates?
And you said 70s? Did I hear you correctly? Earlier, you're talking about the infrastructure.
Oh, Joe, did you mention something about the 70s?
Yeah, I
We're
said
talking
like
about water.
Oh yeah.
some of this infrastructure is from the 60s and 70s. Is that true? I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there, but I figured, these water systems and everything, like the things that turn things on and off. Uh,
Tick
I mean,
tock, tick tock.
and they're
That's
over
sort of
50 years
old.
old, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say entropy exists in everything. I would know. I'm older, so that's actually terrifying because the water systems, like going back to the 60s and 70s, it seems like it's just a matter of time where everything would just go out.
but there's some protection by using these old systems too, right? Like, there's not as many exploits for them, and that's why like NORAD uses like really old systems in those mountain bunkers that are completely separate from any type of network uh, in order to like close them off from all the other systems. So maybe there's something
Hmm.
to that too. I don't know.
It's got to be.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, the tunneling deep down into a cave where maybe signals can't get to you is certainly an interesting way to try to avoid that. Unfortunately, most of us live above ground, but who knows? Maybe that'll change. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's funny you talk about that. Like there's an interesting case somewhere in Europe. They were testing buses that they had received from China and seeing, well, were the buses phoning home? And turns out that they were, and I think they took one of the buses into a cave somewhere, and then saw, oh, why is it sending pings? Why is it sending signals all the way out? But yeah, it's a tricky problem. I don't think there are easy answers to this stuff. I think anyone who tries to apply the way in which things are done in IT to OT is going to have a hard time. And there's going to be a lot of hard realizations as to like, well, it's not the same. You need to think about the problem in a slightly different way. I do think, though, there are some sort of strong common principles that you can think about in terms of how you should handle your systems. One of the biggest gaps we see with a lot of the security of these systems today is that there's no real way to understand, well, what is the security of my system before it's deployed? Can I kind of check the way in which it's actually configured, as opposed to doing just black box testing where you're looking at a network and saying, well, it seems like there's these gaps, but I think there's a lot to be desired on that front when it comes to the overall observability. But how do you maintain and update legacy systems so that they stay secure? It's a hard problem, and that's what we're trying to help our customers solve. Cyber will never be solved, but at least improve on.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about Ironloop, how you guys were founded, like what exactly the problem is you guys serve, and I want to hear a little bit more about the background.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started Ironloop back in the summer of 2025, really with a focus on building a next generation cybersecurity platform. My co-founder and I are both engineers. Both had worked either with or close to hardware. Myself on autonomous vehicles. My co-founder was working on smart glasses at Meta, building out the neural interfaces there. I had seen in the AV world and in a lot of different physical systems when it came to vehicles that cyber was often just an afterthought. That felt strange to me as a software engineer. I didn't understand that. I didn't like that. I started asking questions to a variety of people who I thought would have good answers. It turns out that they didn't. And so I started just exploring the problem space more and more together with Jake, my co-founder. And what we found was really there is this wide gap in the market. There's a lot of great companies from the 2010s that started in the wake of Stuxnet, Dragos, Nozomi, Clarity, Armis, all who have done a great job building out network monitoring solutions to help with things like anomaly detection and finding a lot of those firmware vulnerabilities that do exist in the wild. But no one was really targeting a lot of the lower level systems in terms of, well, how do I understand if my assets are actually configured correctly and securely? And so that's really where we've spent a lot of our time and attention is on can we go at this problem from a bottoms up perspective, look at the way that your assets are configured, help you with earlier stage kind of end-to-end lifecycle coverage from a security perspective, and then help drive remediation, insights, security and compliance from there.
Gotcha. And can you talk a little bit about like your clients? Earlier we talked about like Fed, and then in my mind, because I come from data center world, if I'm running a data center and I have like all these generators and UPS systems, something you said earlier really resonated with me is honestly we don't secure them. We secure the servers, we secure the network. Those UPS systems and generators, they do talk to each other. How would you secure those, or what would you tell to someone that owns data centers?
Yeah. So we got our start more in the defense manufacturing space within the U.S. And this
Mm-hmm.
is in the context of how Joe and I met, but we saw a gap in the market in that from a compliance perspective, there wasn't really anyone focusing on CMMC, cybersecurity maturity model certification, which is the uh, newly enforced cyber framework from the DoD or DOW, whichever flavor of that acronym you like. But
Department
yeah,
of
we saw that.
War.
Yeah, we saw a gap though in the monitoring for OT systems when it came to CMMC, and so we started out working with some customers and design partners in the defense manufacturing space, built our product from there, and now really are focused on going to market more broadly. A lot of manufacturing, but really again can serve all industrial systems. In terms of the data center side of things, though, uh, I think it is a really interesting problem in terms of these HVAC systems were not really built with cybersecurity in mind. More and
Not at
more
all.
of them are being connected, and it's really easy to connect. Honeywell does a great job of making it easy to connect a lot of these systems. I recently bought a new version of my thermostat at home and just swapped it out. I think it maybe cost me like $7 or something crazy like that. But anyways, I think the challenge really is that one, the customers haven't been demanding it, and then two, the OEMs are not really providing that software and providing that service. It's challenging if you don't have software engineers who are running your data center or running your OT facility to figure out, well, where are these gaps? So yeah, that's how we think about things. That's where we want to spend our time is really on bridging that gap between what the OEMs are providing and what skills and kind of employees that the OT operators have.
That's good because you're in a unique space. I don't know. I've never heard anyone else do this.
Yeah, we're trying to solve a niche within the market for sure.
It seems like there's not enough regulation or requirements for OT devices as far as security goes. Like they just want it to network and they don't care if it's secure or not.
Yeah, that's I would say a big problem with cyber broadly. There are some cyber companies that will sell the boogeyman and tell you all these horrible stories about China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and that's certainly one way to get your product out into the market. I think we would really love to pitch more about, well, why is this a valuable tool? What are the unlocks that this gives you? From our perspective, being secure is kind of a prerequisite to adopting new technology, understanding change management, understanding the ways in which your systems operate and actually run is kind of a prerequisite to doing anything with new technology, with AI, with data. And so that's often how we talk about our solution to our customers and where I think they really see the long-term value is when you think about overall operations, engineering, security, and the efficiency of these groups and the productivity of these groups within your organization. Really, if you want to move fast and be able to adopt new technologies to drive profit, to drive revenue, to drive productivity gains, you're going to have to know whether or not your systems are securely configured and how they're changing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important. And it reminds me of this new legislation that came in. And I heard about this at the cybersecurity conference here in San Diego, Cybersecurity Summit. And he was saying that drones from China or other places have been outlawed. And it's because the OT, kind of like you were talking about with those buses, were sending information back to China and stuff. And we can only have drones that are created here in the US. Have you looked into this or seen any like information about drones, big or small, and how they're securing their OT?
Yeah, there's a few startups out in California who are working on manufacturing drones in-house in America from the ground up. I think this is a super challenging problem. Um, Chinese drone companies have done very well, have started out obviously more in the consumer space, but now it's kind of commonplace for a lot of national security concerns, for a lot of defense. I think the drone manufacturing is kind of a tricky problem to solve because really you do need scale. These are attritable assets that need to be deployed in many, many places all over the world. How do you really get to that scale quickly? We've seen everything that's been happening in Ukraine and Israel, and it's tricky to be able to say like, well, we can just move all the manufacturing to the U.S. and we'll get to the same scale that we actually need and is demanded by the Department of Defense or Department of War. So yeah, it is challenging.
I mean, in the Ukraine, and that's how they wage war now. I mean, it's the new war is the war of drones. I mean, it's putting, it's kind of the early days of it where people are kind of taking regular drones and adding explosives and machine guns to them or whatever. But
Yeah.
the next iteration of these are going to be more purpose built for war, and I think it's pretty scary. What do you think, Mike? Skynet remind you of that?
Definitely.
Yeah,
So
it's
what do you think, Josh?
yeah.
I always ask this question: are we going to get Skynet, or are we going to get Star Trek?
Uh, you know, maybe the reality will be somewhere between the two. But yeah, I think it's a tricky problem. I think to say that like, well, everything that's happening in Ukraine is now the future of war, like uh, certainly is possible, but who knows what else is out there. There's obviously so much development and innovation going on with autonomous vehicles of other kinds. Whether it's for ground, air, sea, or space. The whole nature of warfare seems to be changing. Um, what is the role of OT cybersecurity inside of that environment? I think it's going to play a pretty significant role. I mean, you've seen a lot of the cat and mouse games going on in Ukraine as well when it comes to like jamming of drones, trying to find different ways to take them out remotely. You've seen the crazy videos of the long wires running for the drones so that they don't have to get onto any sort of network. But there's a lot of innovation on in the space. It feels like it's moving rapidly, and we'd obviously love to support more and more customers in that way.
Are we adopting AI too fast in manufacturing?
Yeah, I think my view on this is really that again, you need to know, what's inside your house before you start going through with this entire remodel. Um, if you don't know what systems are deployed where, whether or not they can be updated, if it's safe and secure to do so, what changes have been made over the life cycle of these different assets, how I don't really see a path to how you can start deploying AI to help with things like remediation or understanding of your systems. Data is obviously critical for AI to be successful, but without that low level understanding of your assets and how they've changed and what is safe and what is not safe, I don't really see how AI can be leveraged effectively. Um, there's a lot of great companies doing a lot of interesting analytics work on the data that you're able to collect today. But if you actually want to take that from insights to action, I think you need a platform like what we're building.
Yeah, and I've heard of some interesting ones where like the AI will look at the machine's data and uh, it'll predict like when it needs maintenance better than the recommended on the manual,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, the predictive maintenance side is interesting. I feel like that's been the lifelong dream of anyone who wants to deploy machine learning into a lot of these environments.
Hmm.
I my first job out of college, we were working on a lot of different machine learning AI-based software applications for a variety of businesses, sort of more of a consulting model almost. But I remember we were working on some predictive maintenance for a company that was building wind turbines and managing wind turbines, and it was really hard. I mean, it's a lot of data that you're looking at. Um, it's such a small percentage of events that actually matter from a maintenance standpoint. And so building applications like that is extremely challenging, but I think it's extremely valuable as well, which is why people are going to keep doing it. And I'm sure it's going to keep getting better and better and better. We're in this we work here down in the financial district in New York City, but there's a weather company that I've seen that's just continuing to improve and sell better weather data. It's like you think that that would be a solved problem, but it's not. There's infinite inputs to a lot of these physical systems. When you're not limited by a phone or a laptop or a computer of some sort, and you can kind of control all the bits, but in the wild, you can't control all the factors, and so
True.
it's interesting to see where AI fits into all of that.
What does passive OT mean? What's that phrase, passive OT?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of OT systems shouldn't or can't really reply to pings, probes from different sensors on a network. And so when you are thinking about software in these environments, being having the ability to be passive is really important. The worst thing you could do as a software vendor in the OT space would be to install your module and then have it take down some PLC or system that's been running for years or decades with no issue. That's a very fast way to get kicked out of that plant by the plant manager. Um, and so being passive is pretty critical from a deployment perspective, from an integration perspective. I think there's a lot of trust that we need to continue to build with our customer base. I think a lot of companies have gone through that process, and so yeah, knowing that you can run passive, I think is pretty important.
One of the big reasons why people buy cyber insurance from us is that if they have downtime that's extended, past like 6 or 8 hours, that they're going to get, paid their lost income. How do you guys, make it so people have the least amount of downtime as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, we really think about it from a perspective of what is the right way to run your operations? What is the right way to maintain your systems in the full life cycle end to end? There are risky changes that you could ship into your environment that could take down a system. Are you actually scanning those changes before they get live on an asset? There's a continuous monitoring component of what are the changes that are continuing to be made. Are you staying up to date with the variety of policies and security requirements that you want to deploy into your factory, into your plant? Um, are you making sure that you're actually remediating issues that your team claims to be remediating? A lot of those things I think are important. There's a lot of great managed service providers out there, systems integrators out there who will help you define, hey, here are the things you've got to remediate. But if you're not actually fixing those, if they're not staying fixed, you're exposing yourself to more and more risk. And so, kind of the flip side of the cyber insurance piece is, well, how can I raise the baseline security of my system so that hopefully I'm reducing the risk of that downtime, whether it's from a bad change or from external threat.
Some
That's one of the challenges I see in this space. Like, not to put people on blast, like Proficio would set up an MDR and they tell you everything that's going on, everything that's wrong, but who's going to fix it?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and that's the challenge that I see in the space.
Yeah, yeah. Especially when it comes to budgetary concerns, headcount,
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth, like these are real problems, right? It's nice to get a dashboard that tells you you have 50,000 vulnerabilities, but who's actually going to do anything about that? What's more likely is you're just going to stop looking at that dashboard. So I think we need
Exactly.
to think about the future and think about, well, how can we leverage, modern software to really build towards a state of driving the cost of remediation down, because that will really change things from a security perspective. And going back to the point about AI and deploying new technologies, if you can comfortably, safely, securely change things, then that opens a lot of doors and possibilities into what productivity gains you can get as a business.
yeah, uh, those dashboards are great. Single pane of glass.
That's what all these companies are selling. Single pane. We're talking about. We had a company we went to yesterday. We went to a security event. Joe and I did, and one of the flyers was buzzword bingo, and that was the word to single pane of glass. And there's a lot of companies where, oh, you get this awesome dashboard. It's like, okay, that's great. So I've got this compromised server. Now what? Who's going to go fix it? Who's going to
Mm-hmm.
go update it?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yep.
don't know. So yeah, and but looking, your site's really basic, but just doing some research, it sounds like you kill the problem before it even gets to that point where it isn't showing up on the dashboard, is what I'm hearing from you. Also, I was wondering, are you guys part of the FedRAMP ecosystem? So a company says, hey, I have to be FedRAMP certified. All my vendors have to be FedRAMP certified. Can that company call Josh and work with you?
Yeah, so we've taken a slightly different technical approach from most of the companies in this space. Our software runs on-prem, air-gapped inside of our customer environments. So we, Ironloop, the company, never see any of your data. This really helps with a lot of data security concerns that I think folks have, especially within highly regulated industries, or if you're selling to DoW or the government in some capacity. This helps jump through a lot of hoops and holes. If our customer base is able to control the software, we can run entirely on air gapped on a laptop or Raspberry Pi even that has zero internet connectivity ever. Um, as long as we have a way to kind of get some of that lower level data that we care about, we can do a lot of analysis and help generate insights and those next practical remediation steps on how you're going to fix these issues. But yeah, the data security problem, I think, especially when it comes to compliance in these highly regulated industries, is challenging. Especially, again, not to use the AI buzzword of the day, but certainly for if you want to deploy AI applications, you're likely going to need some amount of scaled compute, which often means you're deploying something in the cloud. So yeah, it's something we think about. It's something we watch for. We haven't run into any issues yet because of our technical architecture, but I'm sure the problem will arise in the future.
I just think that's a
For our
huge
listeners managing
differentiator because
plants, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say that's a huge differentiator is when all the data is on premise because everyone else it's all cloud. And there's all kinds of bottlenecks where they go through the AWS FedRAMP certificate. I've experienced this personally. So if I were to look at your service from my perspective, it's like, oh man, I just looking at first principles, there's a truth that you can't deduct from is that, oh, I don't have to deal with all this stuff with AWS and certifications and having people do audits on my inventory and SOC audits. From me, that's a big deal. It's just, hey, we solved this big problem. Oh, by the way, it's a lot easier to solve it our way than the traditional method.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember when I met Joe and the C3 team, um, they were asking me some questions about our software, assuming that we run in the cloud. I'm like, no, 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 on-prem, air gapped. He's like, oh, okay, I see. Like, great.
Yeah,
This is
see?
good. This
That's
is
what you're looking at.
refreshing,
Go,
you know? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Just feel the stress leave the body.
yeah, yeah. No, we're
I mean, it's
very
one of the
intentional. Yeah, very intentional about how we're building the technical architecture, and we are a security product, and so we're going to build it in the way that we think is most secure.
awesome.
The big
Uh,
question is, what do your dashboards look like?
yeah, single pane of glass.
Yeah, we've got nice modern dashboards. The nice thing about starting software company today is there really is a lot that you can do with a little. We've got a great small nimble team that has built a lot of great product along with me and my co-founder working on the first version of the software. But there's great modern tooling out there and ways to really focus in on the UX and make sure that the operators are thought of, the engineers are thought of, the security team is thought of. We really want to be that watering hole for all those different groups.
Great. Where can people find you, Josh?
Yeah, you can find us on ironloop.io. That's our website, but feel free to shoot us a Google. You can get in touch with us on our site pretty easily if you want to learn more about the solution. But we're usually out and about at a few different conferences and trade shows as well throughout the year, and so hope to see you there. But if not, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Josh Ross. I think my URL on LinkedIn is just Josh-Ross1 Josh-Ross1. See, I can't even pronounce my own
We'll
name.
put that in the comments. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
exactly. But yeah, happy to connect, happy to tell you more about what we're doing, and would love to learn about the problems you're facing and see if we can help out.
Awesome.
Awesome. I don't got anything else. I think that's great. Thank you all for listening. Josh, thank you for being on the show. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share this with somebody in industrial or manufacturing tech. This is the stuff that's brand new. People need to hear about because a lot of people are on the old methods of, thinking they're air gap when they're not. And they're not able to monitor systems like you can with a software like Ironloop. So thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
guys for having
appreciate
me.
it.